it amazing, Peter? For as often as we say time flies, man, it feels like a lot longer than 17 days since Damar Hamlin's cardiac arrest in the Bills-Bengals game in Cincinnati. Then the game postponed, ultimately canceled, and now they get together to continue. Not that they're picking up where they left off, obviously, they're starting from scratch, but these two teams crossing paths again with their seasons on the line, and both teams more than capable of advancing to the Super Bowl and winning it if they can get past this round.
I was incredibly impressed at midnight Sunday, 12:10 a.m., whatever time it was right around there, that I got Joe Burrow on the phone after Bengals-Ravens, which, you know, the Bengals and Ravens ought to play a 7-game series. I'd watch every minute. And I realize a lot of people are going to say, I don't want to watch Tyler Huntley. Hey, listen, I want to watch a defense that plays great against a great offense and that frustrates a great offense. And let's see Joe Burrow figure him out, because I think eventually he will. But I think the thing I was most impressed with on a surprisingly impressive playoff weekend was exactly what Joe Burrow told me after that game, which is, because look, if I were the Bengals, I'd be ticked off. And of course, Joe Burrow knows these questions are coming. I think I was probably the first one to ask him this question, but I want to read what Joe Burrow said when I asked him about that game, which, obviously was just 2 weeks in the rearview mirror, and how, regardless of what happened in those circumstances, the NFL did not do anything, like have a coin flip for this game to determine home field or to have a neutral site game. When I asked him whether it was fair, and he said, I'm sure he anticipated the question. He said that, it is what it is. And then he said, when something like that happens, you're not the Bengals and the Bills anymore. You're NFL players who care about each other and want the best for one another. That was a tough moment, and it's great that he's back in Buffalo with his team. And I gave him 2 chances to say something about the relative, if you feel that it's unfair, of going up there. And he just wouldn't do it, because he said, hey, listen, we have to find a way. He said, it's our job to go in there and figure out a way to get a win. Bravo, Joe Burrow. And sometimes when you think that, that social media and the opinion makers or the opinion shapers are the loudest voices, both in the media and in the outside world and in fans. Guys like Joe Burrow say, hey, everybody, just shut up. We're going to play the game. There's more important things to worry about, and we are not going to focus on that this week. So I applaud Joe Burrow for that.
The Bengals went through a serious trauma as they witnessed what happened with Damar Hamlin 17 days ago. The Bills have been dealing with it ever since. Yesterday, Josh Allen and Sean McDermott, quarterback and head coach, respectively, of the Buffalo Bills, addressed whether the emotion from the Damar Hamlin incident would carry over to this not really rematch between the Bengals and the Bills.
Well, I think the guys are in a good spot. Damar's in the building now, almost starting daily, and so that's good news. And as he continues to improve, I think those are, that certainly helps. So that's going to be, that experience we'll carry that with us. And there's a challenge to that, but there's also a lot of good that came from that. And I think right now we need to focus on the positive and the positives that came out of that, as opposed to the other piece of it right now.
I don't think there's honestly too much left over. Obviously, with guys being able to see a little bit of Damar, I know Coach said he's been in the building. So guys being able to see him, talk with him, I think that kind of alleviates most of that. I'm not saying that there's going to be none. I can't speak for everybody on the team. But again, I think we're just extremely focused right now and just having a good week of preparation and, trying to go out there on Sunday and execute.
The Bills have not looked dominant. They haven't looked particularly sharp in the two games since Damar Hamlin's cardiac arrest in Cincinnati. The Patriots gave the Bills a tougher game than expected in Week 18, and the Dolphins, down 17-0, made it extremely interesting. Took the lead at one point over the Bills on Sunday in the wild card round. So I feel like the Bills are still kind of waiting to break through and break out, and there are questions about whether they even can. Yeah. There are questions about the Bengals offense. But, Peter, before we pivot to that, the Damar Hamlin thing, again, 17 days, it seems like it's been so much longer than that. I do need to give credit because we did this a couple of weeks ago with Gail Benson and the Saints when they made 67 AEDs available to youth recreational leagues throughout the New Orleans area. The Packers kicked in $100,000 yesterday for AEDs, 80 of them throughout Wisconsin, Upper Peninsula of Michigan, working with Bell & Health, their official healthcare partner, not just to make these available so they're at sporting events where youths can be struck in the chest and go into cardiac arrest, or really anybody there can have cardiac arrest. AEDs plus training in the use of the AEDs and CPR for people who will be in and around those facilities when those games are occurring. I'm telling you, lives are going to be saved by what happened to Damar Hamlin. And that, to me, is the thickest silver lining to this dark cloud that the Bills have been dealing with.
Yeah, there's no question about it, Mike. And I think I spoke the other day to a lacrosse player. I'm going to be writing about him in my column. A lacrosse player from Florida who 16 years ago suffered the exact same fate as Damar Hamlin. Got a hard shot in the chest on the field in Jacksonville and went down. And luckily for him, the head coach of his lacrosse team was a local firefighter who came out and right away started to perform CPR on him. And luckily, there was a device there to shock his heart, back into form. And, he went to the hospital and is okay now. And it's amazing. I asked him, now it's 16 years later, how are you doing? And he goes, great. I've got a business. He's got 100 employees. He's 31 years old. Went to Central Florida. I got a business. Yes, I learned CPR, and he said he was going to reach out, and if Damar wanted to talk to him, he'd be happy to do it. But, Mike, the amazing thing about this story is that this kid was playing lacrosse 1 month later, having his heart stop on the field. And he said, when I woke up and looked around and everybody was crying and so concerned, he said, I wondered, and then I felt, oh, my God, my chest hurts, which when you have CPR, your chest hurts. But I do think that it's a great lesson for everybody to understand that, just because your heart stops, there are ways to start it again and to get well and to live a prosperous and very fruitful and productive life. And I think Damar Hamlin is going to have the opportunity to do the same thing.
And two NFL teams making the significant contributions to their local communities. Here's hoping the rest of them eventually follow suit. And these AEDs are available at all youth sporting events where something like that could happen. Because, Peter, as I said a couple of weeks ago, we are inevitably going to hear a story of someone whose life was saved, and the person who saved that young person's life is going to say, I was aware of this because of what happened to Damar Hamlin. And the news broke last Saturday that Damar Hamlin was back in the team facility. There was a ton of speculation as to whether or not he was going to be at the wild card game. The Bills were keeping it extremely quiet. I think there was contemplation. The AP even reported at one point the plan was for him to be there, and then the plan changed. I'd be stunned if he's not there this weekend for the Bills-Bengals game. And if he's in the facility every day, and he's going to be nearly 3 full weeks removed from this, and he seems to be doing so well, I fully expect that we're going to have that Damar Hamlin moment we've all been anticipating, especially because if the Bills Well, if the Chiefs win the day before, we know that if the Bills advance, there won't be an AFC Championship game in Buffalo. The only way it's going to happen in Buffalo is if the Jaguars upset the Chiefs on Saturday. So this is the last chance. If the Chiefs win Saturday, this is the last chance for the Damar Hamlin moment in 2022 season. And I think we're going to see it, and I think it's going to be awesome. No matter what we expect, I think whatever we witness is going to be better than what we could have envisioned.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. And look, at some point, he is going to surface publicly. And I'm sure that, if I'm Damar Hamlin, look, I was in Buffalo, the last week of the season and almost 2 weeks ago. And the outpouring of love, I went to somebody's house and they had gigantic displays of Damar Hamlin literally being beamed on their house from a template that was being shot onto their house that their high school son had invented. That's got to be overwhelming for a guy like Damar Hamlin. Let's face it, nobody in America had heard of Damar Hamlin before that Monday night. 2 days later, he's on the back cover of the New York Post with a blaring headline, America's Son. And so if you look at all of that and you look at everything, all the attention, people going live from the hospital at all hours of the day or night, how is Damar? How's he doing? It's got to be overwhelming for a guy who has lived his life totally, absolutely without fame. So, honestly, I don't blame Damar Hamlin if he wants to lie low or lay low for a while. So whatever he chooses to do, whatever the Bills choose to do, we ought to just support it and say, hey, if he's ready to go out and to appear at and wave to the crowd at a football game, good for him. It'll be a very emotional time. But if he chooses not to, hey, it's his call, it's their call, and I think you got to support him.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.